Welcome to Can I Get a Witness? This is a podcast brought to you from The Witness Inc., where we amplify Black brilliance at the intersection of Jesus, joy, and justice. I'm Danielle Mark, and I have the privilege of serving as president of The Witness. This podcast is an invitation to see, to hear, and to celebrate what God is doing through the lives of Black Christian leaders, artists, and thought leaders. Let's jump into today's episode. Rasool Berry serves as the teaching and family pastor at the Bridge Church in Brooklyn, New York, and is director of partnerships and content development at Our Daily Bread Ministries. He is the general editor and contributor of the book and video series, The Whole Man, which focuses on spiritual development for Black men. He is the host of the Where You're From podcast and featured in Juneteenth, Faith and Freedom documentary, directed by Yaki Smith, which was the recipient of the Best of Fest Award at Hill Country Film Festival and the Film Slam Student Choice Award for Best Feature Film at the 47th Cleveland International Film Festival. Rasool graduated from University of Pennsylvania with a bachelor's degree in Africana Studies and Sociology. Rasool's work often examines the intersection of faith and culture and has had his work featured in Christianity Today, The Witness, and the book Keeping the Faith, Reflections on Politics and Christianity. He lives in Brooklyn with his wife, Tamika, and their daughter. Well, Rasool, thank you so much for being here with us.
Glad to be here with you, as always, Danielle. It's a joy.
You're the best. You're the best. I appreciate you. And how does it feel to be back in Philly?
It's always just a dope experience to be back in my hometown. Live in New York City now, but get back as many times as I can, because this is home. This is where I was born, raised. On the playground is where I spend most of my days. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what it was like for young Rasool to grow up.
Yeah. So, I think I kind of look at my childhood, I kind of break it up into kind of at least two to three parts. So as I mentioned, I was born here in Philly. I have an older brother named Rich. And my parents had broken up when I was 2 because my dad was in the street life and my mom kind of wanted to protect us from that. Yeah. And so I didn't really grow up knowing him that much, All I knew was my name was Rasool, which was inspired by him. He had joined the Nation of Islam. So my name is Arabic, coming from that. And that we were in this kind of single parent home situation. And, it was just me, my brother, my extended family. And then when I was 7, remember it was in December, my mom kind of brought my brother and I together to tell us that our dad had been murdered. And so that was something that was a earthquake in the sense of like just a shift, and even though I didn't have a close relationship with him, I just knew that that would no longer be a possibility from that point on. And so my mom really believed in my family and education. And so we were in a private school to that point, but she couldn't afford to keep paying the, tuition for my older brother and I. She was pretty young too. She had me when she was 20 and my older brother when she was 18. And so my uncle told her about a school that was a private school that was free. You had to take a test to get in, but, she had us apply and we got accepted. And that school was just about 4 miles away from here, Girard College, which is a boarding school specifically for low-income single-parent situations. So our exact situation. And that was kind of like the second phase of life, right? Because I was 8 years old when I started going to this boarding school and totally changed, my rhythms, my life. I remember the first night just kind of like sleeping in a new bed and being like, okay, this is my reality. And I think a couple things shifted in that situation. Like one, it's an incredible campus. Just national historic monument, pillars, marble, walls around it, 40, I think 8 acres of land. And so it's an incredible opportunity from an education standpoint. But from a social standpoint, it was a bit of a challenge. I mean, as much as it might be hard to believe, me coming in at fourth grade made me what they call a newbie, which was like, I was new to the game. Like most of my classmates had been there since first grade. And so I was an outsider, right? And prior to that point, I had been, I was the kind of baby in the family. So I was the apple of everyone's eye. Now I'm just this new kid that, doesn't have much going for me. I was the shortest person in my class, boy or girl. I was not athletic. I was not cool. I didn't have any of the things that would say, okay, he's worth paying attention to. So as a result of that, I experienced being on the outside a lot. And I think that really shaped me in a lot of ways. One, it, was a struggle just to feel like to try to fit in and to feel like part of the group. And that was something I desired. But it also made me an observer of communities and groups because I was on the outside.
Wow.
And so it made me curious about that, and also about who else is on the outside.
Yeah.
And so that became part of my DNA, my MO, to kind of just be a sensitive person that's like, who's not around, who's on the margins, so to speak. So those were things that kind of shaped me until, and then the last kind of chapter was my senior year in high school. Now, as I said, that I was not one of the cool kids or popular. So, but I was National Honor Society. I was voted best role model, senior class president. And so I had like all these things. And I thought that meant that whatever it was a good person, I was that. I was clearly better than my peers is how I thought about it at the time. And that if God was there at this point, I didn't go to church. I didn't go to anything. I was just kind of what I would call a self-righteous secular person. And I was like, I'm good. Like God must be impressed with me because I'm a good boy, right? I get good grades. And there was a situation that arose involving two young ladies. Of course, it's always about a girl now. And I was trying to be a player, got caught because you can't be a player if you ain't got game. And I remember the one, she said, you know better than other guys. In fact, you're worse because you think you're better than them.
Oh.
And it was like this moment that God revealed to me that, what makes you think I'm impressed? Like, with your accolades? Like, I'm looking at something deeper. When push comes to shove, you may not have the same opportunities as the other people that you look down on have.
Yeah.
But you have the same issues with your heart. Well, I confessed to the other person, and she said, I forgive you. And I was like, huh? Like the kind of like shaggy, like Scooby. Huh? And why? I asked why. I didn't understand. I had just gotten chewed out for good reason. She said, Jesus forgave me for everything that I've done. So I don't think I should hold this against you. Well, I'm blown away and somewhat confused because I don't really understand this whole context. And so I'm like, tell me more. So I started hearing the gospel with new ears. I'm not going to say I never heard it before, but I had heard it in this category. It was like, I have religious stuff. Some people need a crutch to get by life. That's fine.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, I realized that there was something to this aspect of spirituality and forgiveness and love and truth that I had been missing. And so I started, hearing that message with new ears, with some deep wrestling with my pride, with my ego, with my kind of skepticism, and eventually, put my faith in Christ that summer. And that coincided right before my freshman year in college. So that's kind of the journey of like how a lot of what shaped me. And at the same time, some of these same purposes and priorities of what does it look like to pay attention to who's on the margins and bring them in what I would later understand to be, really tied to these themes of injustice and justice, they also kind of emerged at that same time.
Wow. That's amazing how God is always preparing us for what he has prepared for us and shaping us through our life experiences, even at young ages, and your story is really a testimony to that. So take us to freshman year.
Yes.
Just gave your life to the Lord,
Yes.
start walking with the Lord. And you're going to a college campus where some people go to wild out.
Where I was just planning on going to Wild Out just a few months before, just to keep it straight. You know what I mean? Yeah, like just to paint a picture. So this boarding school I went to was pretty small. Like my graduating class was 33, and our class was 25 guys and 8 girls. Wow. Who I'd known since I was in middle school or elementary school, right? So we were like brothers and sisters.
Right.
So I was so ready to go to college, like, yo, I'm gonna meet these women, I'm gonna do my thing. Then I meet Jesus, and it's like, what? Okay, you got some standards and boundaries on this thing. Yeah. And I would love to tell you that I came in walking on a cloud and walking the straight and narrow. That was not the testimony. I mean, literally still dripping wet from the baptism when I'm on campus, right? And so I think it was a journey of like, what does it look like to honor God with who I am in relationships? What does it look like to show up in places where it was a very skeptical campus about issues of faith. And I'm people challenging me on a lot of different fronts. Like you got just your straight up, atheists that's just like, I don't believe any of this. Like you have folks that are bringing up history and issues of oppression and colonialism and how that ties into the history of Christianity. And you're like, there's that. Then you got just the flesh that's just like, yo, you got all this access to whatever you want to do. Why in the world would you now want to and so all of those things really were in place, but there was also something else. I had a friend, one of my roommates actually, so I didn't know him before then, who was a, really committed Christian. And before I knew it, I would just start asking questions because I didn't know much about the Bible. And we started having what I called a Christian rap session, like in the room where we would just open up the Bible and just talk about random topics and see how they related. And I remember being like skeptical at first, like, does this book really have something to say about what these issues are like? And then as I started to have some more seasoned people explain, I'm like, wow, like actually God's answers are better than our questions. Like this was deep. And so, okay, so that piece, it makes sense. Cause I had kind of put God on like a trial basis, like you do with like the Netflix, you know what I mean? Like, let me just see, because I don't know. It's got a whole lot of reputation of weirdness in this whole space. So I ain't trying to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. But as I started to see the rational and logical, there's that scripture that says, come, let us reason together. Yeah. Like God is not afraid. And then actually, the scriptures talk about this aspect of him making you with a mind. And that even us putting on the mind of Christ. And so, so I started to like see those connections. And then I think the other part was having sense of accountability. So I walked and stumbled when it came to on the relationship front and whatnot until I started to have some folks around me, specifically as I started getting involved with campus ministry. That was a thing of just having peers that was like, yo, I'm living this thing out. Like in the same way we're trying to figure this out together. And it was particularly a group also from Philly, a Christian hip hop group that was big in the 90s, early 2000s, a cross movement. And I ended up meeting them at a conference, the Impact Conference. That was a big conference that brought together African-American college students. And really they kind of put me under their wing. I'm starting to now travel, seeing hip hop, which I had loved, be used in this way to glorify God and be like, oh, you don't have to be in this like cookie cutter. I'm in the suit and tie. Like you could, at that time, it was baggy denim and Timbs. Like, and that you could be your authentic self and still like lean into these issues. At the same time, I'm experiencing like racism and discrimination in a new way at this Ivy League school. I went to the University of Pennsylvania in West Philly.
Yeah.
And like, I was kind of surprised, like, because, I thought I ain't had no problem with race, like, whatever. But then people have a problem with you, you know what I mean? And so that was something I got involved with. I was a president of Black Student League by my sophomore year, and really just active on campus to try to make it a space where everybody could experience belonging. I ended up majoring in Africana Studies and minoring in sociology, really like trying to lock in to understand this cultural heritage, not just to understand the world, but myself. But then also it helped me understand others. And it gave me like another like vocabulary to understand the human experience. So that same sense of outside other group who's marginalized, like that started to like deepen in my understanding of things, of history, of literature, and of culture. And so that had a profound impact. And then my senior year, I went to study abroad and to Cameroon, Central Africa. And then that kind of was like the cherry on top. So, my campus experience was it was definitely a roller coaster in a lot of ways, but essentially getting to a place of taking my faith seriously and seeing that connect with a sense of purpose in the world.
So on that note, you have, from growing up as a child, you've developed eyes to see people in the margins. You started to have this interest in what does it look like to engage in justice.
Yeah.
You're going to school, majoring in African American Studies, sociology. What was God preparing you for next to step into after college? And what were some of the things he was teaching you and showing you about your future?
Yeah. At the time, I had no idea. I was just like, I don't know what I want to do. At first, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I took a pre-law class. And I was like, oh, wait, this is not about truth. This is just about like how to win an argument. I'm not in on that. Then I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. And then I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. And so I remember my senior year, like I was like 2 weeks before graduation, not knowing what I was going to do. So I was kind of planning on doing what a lot of college students do when they don't know what to do, which is take more classes, like, go to grad school. And I was saying, maybe I'm going to teach. Maybe I want to be a teacher. And so I was walking on campus and somebody was like, hey, there's a job fair happening on campus. And I was like, really? So, I go to the job fair. And this is like I said, like a week before graduation. And there was a representative there from the Philadelphia School of Education, and they were there promoting a new program called the Balanced Literacy Intern, which basically meant that they would hire you even if you didn't have a certification in teaching, which I did not. But if you had a college degree, you could be in the classroom. They would use it to basically reduce class size by having an additional teacher in there to kind of help in literacy skills. And so I would be in the classroom with a certified teacher. And I was like, yo, that's cool. So I could my logic was like, I could either pay $30,000 to get a degree to teach, or I could get paid almost $30,000 to teach and see if I like it. That's like a $60,000 swing. I can do that. You know what I mean? So I did that, and it was incredible experience for the year. My certified teacher was pregnant. She went on maternity leave in November of that year. So after 2 months, I'm like doing lesson plans and stuff like that myself, like based on her. So, but I liked it. And I think were it not for another calling, I would probably still be an educator today in that way, in the school district. But at the same time, I was still teaching Bible study on campus at Penn and loving it and just being like, this is what I would want to do with my life. Just really seeing people understand like the word and seeing how that applies to life and whatnot. And so I ended up being challenged by the ministries that I was working with to start a ministry, a campus ministry with Impact Movement at Howard University. And so after a year of teaching, I did that, which also meant raising financial support, which was a whole nother, I know you know a little something about that. And that was a new world and experience, but moved down to DC. I kind of say I went kicking and screaming because I thought it was all about Philly at that time. That was my world. But I was like, all right, Lord, I'm going to give you 5 years max to be outside, but then I'm gonna come back. And you know, that was 25 years ago, and I haven't lived in the city again. So never tell God what your limitations are.
Listen, that's a good lesson.
But nah, so I think when I saw all that come together, it was like, I don't know exactly how long this is going to go. It wasn't like some major career shift where I was thinking, no, I just felt like this is what God has me to do right now.
Yeah.
You know, to give to people what I was lacking on campus when I was trying to figure out life and faith and living right and all of that stuff, and to just give support to that. And so, yeah, but essentially that started on the path of doing that in a contextual way that related to the culture. So I was doing that at a campus like Howard, you know, the Mecca, a premier HBCU, and really trying to make sense of the world together and through the lens of faith, but also with practice and doing the work of justice as well. So yeah, I did campus ministry for years before kind of pivoting a few years ago to something new.
Yeah. So before you pivoted to what was new with Our Daily Bread, with pastoring, what did justice work look like for you?
You know, real talk, and I think this is a part of the story, and I know that The Witness is no stranger to this story arc. So I would say, like I said, I'm leading demonstrations on affirmative action in college, president of the Black Student League, actually organized a umbrella organization for all the different Pan-African groups.
Amazing.
And so I was really in that space, but then at that time, it was not too many, there wasn't a witness around the witness so it was hard to find spaces that helped you to integrate all of who you were, right?
Wow.
And so essentially, when I went into the ministry space, even though it was in a primarily Black context, even though it was in a legacy that was dealing with these issues, those conversations and those sensibilities and those impulses kind of laid dormant for a while. At that point, it was all about sharing the gospel. It was all about, you know, discipleship and one-on-one mentorship, which those are valuable things, but it was all about those things. And so, and I thought that was the way, I was like, I don't know where to figure those other things out, but this is what I'm getting kind of fed. And, you know, and it probably fed is a good way to think about it, because when you think about a diet, right?
Yeah.
Like, protein is great. You need that.
Yeah.
You know, carbs, you need those too.
Yeah.
Fats, you need those too, right? But whenever you are just doing the one thing to the detriment, it went to the ignoring the others, it creates an unbalanced diet.
That's right.
And that makes you unhealthy.
That's right.
Right? So it's not that chicken is bad, or it's not that broccoli is bad, or it's not that, you know, avocados are bad. But if you only eat one of those things, it messes you up because your body isn't getting all of what it needs. And in the same way, I think that for a while, my diet in the Christian space was just like on the spiritual, like, you know, other worldly components, like intimate components, supernatural components, and wasn't on those other things. And so there were a sense in which it was part of the vernacular, but it wasn't part of the practice for a while. And actually, I would say laid largely dormant until around the same time it started to kick up with The Witness, which is when you started seeing this be part of the conversation, like with Trayvon Martin and with Mike Brown. And then, you know, like, and all of a sudden, as the community now in this evangelical space that I've been a part of is grappling with these issues in ways that it doesn't have the resources or the frameworks. I'm like, oh, I can help because I have this background and I've studied these things and I've been involved. Here's how to explain. And so it kind of got, you know, thrust on me again in a way that became to put more things back on the menu of what I needed to be eating and consuming and working on again. And then that is where, you know, you start having broader conversations about not just, like I remember being at the Impact Conference, and I remember we went out to go, you know, give out boxes of food and to share our faith. And we talked to a guy, and he told us, it was the only first time in my life, this dude, we're on the streets of Atlanta, and he's like, and we come up to him, and he's like, yo, I'm a drug dealer. He's like, I've run this block. I pay off the cops, and they look the other way. So what you trying to tell me about Jesus? And I'm like, see, this is why I don't do this stuff. This is crazy. But the guy that was with me, because they pair you with an experienced person, he was undeterred, and he kept sharing it. And I'm like, oh, we didn't get shot yet. Okay. And about 10 minutes later, he prayed to receive Christ. And that was like, and I mean, was repenting of all the stuff that he had done in his life, right? Like really changed.
Yeah.
And I saw that piece.
Right.
And, but it took a while to see the other piece of like, what were the systems that were in place about why he was on that corner and the dynamics that created the injustices and the poverty that was in that community, right? How about instead of just giving a box of food out, really trying to ask broader questions about hunger itself, right?
That's
like which are also things that the scripture gives us the tools to think about, right? But you have to be able to see it and picture it and understand it and draw that out. And I think in the traditions that I was in, we just didn't have that in that robust way at that time. I didn't have access to that until these bigger questions started coming up. And now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I have to now say something and do something and be a part of this conversation in a way that is kind of dividing the church and presenting an anemic gospel, like a malnourished, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're giving out food, but the food is not, we're just giving out peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like there's people need a whole lot more. And so then they're thinking, if that's what Christianity has to offer, just peanut butter and jelly, I'm good. And it's like, no. We actually got a whole bunch of stuff like fruits, vegetables, meat. But I needed to become more adept at getting my nutritionist, degree and license to be able to offer the full. And I think that was part of the reason. One of the things that was part of that was being more in the church context.
Yeah.
It also involved me moving back to the East Coast where there were just different types of conversations. I had moved from DC to Indiana by way of Orlando at the time. So I did this kind of like loop. And I was like, I need to go to where these conversations are happening. And there was a guy that I had served with at Howard. Shout out to Pastor James Roberson. He had just started a church called The Bridge in Brooklyn. And one of the key themes was justice. And so we ended up partnering together, again, moved there in 2015 and began to really, I remember the first, event that I did the first week I moved to New York, and it was talking about police brutality and gun violence and things that the church needed to do. And like, I'm in this conversation.
Yes.
And I think, so from that standpoint, it's been a combination of writing, of speaking, and of doing, work on the ground in a local community that has really kind of taken off in a new way. So now I feel like I have a more balanced diet than I used to.
That's beautiful. That's such a gift, right?
It is.
That's the opportunity to step into something where you can be your full self.
Yes. It's necessary.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
So what are you excited about? Well, actually, let's go back real quick. What are you proud of and grateful to the Lord for that you've had a chance to work on, be a part of, when you think of being a pastor at the Bridge, and also some of your work with Our Daily Bread?
Yeah. So moved to New York City in 2015 and became part of this community where we're now like going in all the different areas of what the scriptures have to teach about everything. And it is a more complete and holistic approach, which was great. And I would say in 2021, early 2021, I ended up getting exposed to another kind of facet of ministry. So up until that point, it had been a lot of relational dynamics, campus ministry, pastoring. But I got this opportunity to be part of a documentary in 2019 called In Pursuit of Jesus that took me around the world, having the same kind of conversations about people on the margins and how do we benefit from their insights about faith, about culture, about life. And I kind of just got hooked on the content side of things, of like creating something, you know, like the whole process, post-production, editing, all that. And that was my first exposure to it. And so then I started doing a podcast called Where You're From, which you also featured on. And so from there, saw some real opportunity to continue to partner with Our Daily Bread Ministries, which we're doing all that. And all I had known them from was like the little booklet with the nice little scenic imagery. Right. Yeah. And I had read them a while ago, but it since moved on. And it was like, you know, it's cool. And I was like, wait, y'all do all this? And yeah, there's a lot of work to do. So, so in that scenario, that kind of ushered in a new opportunity to think about what's the type of content that we can create that can really hit people in that same holistic diet that we were talking about.
Right.
And so I mentioned this was 2021. And so Juneteenth was starting to become a big, movement toward making it a federal holiday. And just in general, like that was, I mean, you know, in Philly, that wasn't like going back 20, 30 years. That wasn't something that people were talking about a lot in this part of the country. But as I was sitting with the significance of the day and learning that one of the names for Juneteenth was Jubilee Day, it kind of blew my mind. And all of the things, now the diet is starting to come together because so Jubilee, that was significant because in Leviticus 25, can I teach for a second?
I was going to say preach.
Okay.
You can teach us.
Yeah. So, you know, Leviticus is the law. That's usually the book where I say Bible plans go to die, right? Like folks be going strong in Genesis, make their way out through Exodus, be like, oh, this is great. This is like really exciting. Right. And then the second half of Exodus be kind of rough with the laws, and then Leviticus would be rough. But keep pressing. This is reason to press in because in those laws,
that's right,
God is teaching his people how to live in the world differently from the way that the world lives, but people's around them. And one of the key issues that we see from the beginning, right? So not only is there the spiritual break that happens in a relationship with God and humanity when we decide to sin in the garden, but that theological, spiritual break has ethical implications immediately, right? We see it with Adam blaming Eve for the sin, Eve blaming somebody, you know, the creation. And then what happens to their sons? You know, Cain kills Abel, right? The first instance of murder that we see. And all throughout the rest of that time from, you know, the Canaanites and all of this, like child sacrifice being introduced and then ultimately slavery, we see the ethical implications of this spiritual break. And so God delivers his people in the Exodus story, you know, from bondage, you know, Moses the deliverer, let my people go. And brings them into the promised land. But it's not just to be like, okay, so you can be all fat and sassy. It's so that you can be a light and a witness to the nations around you about how it's supposed to look like to live in harmonious, just relationships with each other. And so how do we do that? We do that with the law, right? Now, one of those laws had in place because back in those times, the primary reason why people would find themselves in servitude, indentured servitude usually, or slavery, was because they had debts that they could not pay. You know, maybe they borrowed some tools for the crops, and there was a drought, and now they are behind. And there wasn't credit cards, and there wasn't, MasterCard or nothing like that. It wasn't MasterCard. It was, you become my master, right?
Yeah.
It was an actual person.
Right.
And the only thing they had to sell was their labor. And so, but of course, people exploited that. Sometimes people would get captured in wars and be put in prison. So even early on, the instances of enforced slavery and servitude of different types became normative. And it really was a matter and even a sign of wealth for people. So, and of course, the people of Israel themselves had been in bondage for 430 years before they get delivered, 4 centuries plus.
Yeah.
And so when they get to the other side of that thing, God is like, okay, this is one of the ways in which I'm going to help you orient society so that you don't replicate the injustices and the brutality that you yourselves have just experienced in Egypt.
Right.
And so that means I'm going to make a way so that if someone finds themselves in bondage, if they find themselves behind on their mortgage, let's just call it, if they find themselves behind in their debt, that will not be a perpetual state. So I call it the Super Bowl of Sabbaths, the Jubilee. So the whole rhythm of their calendar is you have every 7th day was a day that they were supposed to rest. Now, I'm getting somewhere with this.
No,
Hang with me.
I'm with you. I'm tracking.
So if you remember in Exodus, the primary tension between Moses and Pharaoh is the fact that Moses is saying, let my people go to worship on the Sabbath, let them rest. And Pharaoh's like, they are my workers. They will know. They're going to work every day. And so that's the source of the conflict. He's not even saying let them go completely. He's like, let them go for rest. But it elevates the fact that Pharaoh doesn't see them as humans made in the image of God. He sees them as tools. And so he's like, no, you ain't getting no rest, right? And so in contrast to that, we see God says, no, you're going to have a day to rest. And not just those who have wealth.
That's right.
Your servants,
Yeah.
your children, your animals, the field.
Yeah.
Because every entity, every creation has dignity and deserves to rest. So that was part of the ethical implications of the Sabbath. But then there was a Sabbath year. So that's 7 every 7th day. Right. Every 7th year, there would be a sense where the fields would be laid to rest, and which also gave animals reprieve and things like that. So that was the Sabbath year. Well, then that's 7. But then if you take 7 years times 7 years, that's 49.
That's right.
That's what the Super Bowl of Sabbaths. That's the Jubilee. So on the 50th, the year after that, the 50th year, every Jubilee would be a time where this is the full expression of what it means for God's kingdom and his heaven to shine on earth like it is in heaven. And that is one where the deep cleansing of the earth happens. This is where it's like, okay, anybody that is in debt, your debts are forgiven. Could you imagine? Student loans, medical debt, credit card, car loans, all of that wiped away.
Yeah.
And imagine that kind of freedom that gives people to reset. Anybody who was in bondage because of those debts would be set free, which is why they call it Jubilee. Jubilee literally is like celebration, like loud noise. Like, of course people are like, yo, people are people. We shouting, we free, right? We got options and choices. And so that was called the Jubilee. Now, that was a long way around talking about Juneteenth.
That was good.
Thank you. So when I hear that one of the early names for Juneteenth was Jubilee Day, my mind is like, yo, these people peep game on several levels. They answer several questions. Going all the way back to those who were questioning, well, why would you, accept, Christianity? This was used as a justification to oppress and own slaves. I'm like, y'all just listening to the side of those who are in the group. You're not listening to the side of the people who are outside of the group But because this is something that's been embedded in me early on, I understand the fact that did you hear what Harriet Tubman had to say about it?
Yeah.
Guess what they called her? Moses. So they're seeing themselves in this story, but they're not seeing themselves as those who are worthy of being oppressed. They're seeing themselves as one who God is on their side.
That's right.
To deliver.
That's right.
Have you considered Frederick Douglass? Frederick Douglass, who writes in his appendix to his own autobiography, I love the pure, peaceable Christianity of Christ. I therefore hate the slaveholding, women whipping, man stealing, hypocritical religion of this land. In fact, I consider it the greatest of libels and slanders to call the religion of this land Christianity. Have you heard him and what he had to say about it?
Right.
So all of this, all of a sudden, you start to get almost like a paradigm shift where you see for these folks, even though it was illegal to read, even though it was oftentimes trying to be imposed on them that their bondage was based on some false interpretations of the scripture, the curse of Ham, or using a slave Bible, that they saw something completely different. What they saw was a divine deliverance that says that this is the same type of message and ethos that God had from the scriptures from the very beginning, that this day of Jubilee is a day of celebration because God has set us free. And so the first Juneteenth celebration happens at a church. I was like, what? Get out of here. And so I was like, I would love to go to that church and go to the descendants of the people who kept this day of called Juneteenth alive, to hear what was their perspective, what was their family story about this. And so fortunately, we got the opportunity to do that. We went to Galveston, Texas, birthplace of Juneteenth, and shot a documentary there, in other cities in Texas as well, talking to the descendants of those who were emancipated on Juneteenth. And what we found was, to a person, folks were like, yo, they didn't think it was Abraham Lincoln that was freeing them. They were like, God did this. And so the early infusion and holding together of the ethic, the justice, and the faith was like put together in this incredibly poignant and beautiful story. And so we got a chance to tell that story in a documentary called Juneteenth, Faith, and Freedom, and to publish devotionals like this one called Jubilee.
Show them right there.
Yeah, there you go. Jubilee, a Juneteenth celebration that talks about and highlights. It's funny, on the very back, it says, set this year of Jubilee apart as holy, a time to proclaim freedom throughout the land for all who live there. Leviticus 25:10. And so so we created these resources, and we even did an album that features Sho Baraka, Lecrae, Propaganda, some incredible artists, to highlight this aspect of making a joyful noise about freedom, because freedom is a spiritual thing and a spiritual practice. So that was something that has been great to see the reaction and response to. It's now on Amazon Prime and Tubi and PBS, and it's taken us all over the country to kind of do screenings and things like that. And so, that's been just one of the things that we've been able to do that's been exciting.
Yeah. I appreciate you getting into your pastoral bag, going piece by piece and breaking it down for us. Because there's always something that God is trying to teach us. If we can connect the pieces and have the eyes to see, the ears to hear. So we actually screened Juneteenth, so we loved it. And we'll be screening it again. What else is coming up that people can pay attention to?
Well, I also got to say this, because one of the things that I wrestled with early on in life, and definitely even becoming a believer, was in light of not having my father around because of his death and, just absence in my life. What did it mean to be a man holistically in the world? And so we were able to put together a book called The Whole Man, which I kind of put a copy here, 40 spiritual reflections from Black men on the head, heart, hands, and soul. And this was a approach to also create a resource that is holistic, right? Like kind of that whole meal again, where, it's not just one thing. And so we look at mental health, we look at emotional health and relationships, we look at work and the work of our hands and our soul, and we made a book with insights about each of those things and a video series that men can have together to talk about these things, specifically from a Black male perspective. And so that's something that we've been excited about. And we were able to even host a workshop at the Joy and Justice Conference. So shout out there. But moving forward, again, this integration has just kind of continued to blossom and bloom. So we recently put out another documentary. This one is called The Return. And I think it very much dovetails off of the same issues of like that. A large reason why so many of us didn't grow up with our fathers is the whole system of mass incarceration and the criminal justice system.
Right.
And so we decided to highlight both the legacy of that, but also give people a hopeful picture of what they can do to help address those injustices so we can proclaim Jubilee.
That's right.
To those who need to hear it in this new aspect of oppression and injustice, right? And I say that because even though, and this is a statistic that, the new Jim Crow with Michelle Alexander and others have made known that the United States makes up 2% of the world's population, and we incarcerate 20% of the world's population, right? So exponentially higher. And oftentimes, Black and brown communities are over-policed, are even subject to a lot of unjust arrests, and because people don't have the finances or the expertise to get out of it, they find themselves kind of stuck in that situation. Well, we highlighted the story of a man named Jonathan Irons. Jonathan was 16 years old. He was sentenced to like 60 years in prison for armed robbery. Nobody died for a crime he didn't commit. And at 16, tried as an adult, put into maximum security prison with adults, and really languished in this place, barely literate, but taught himself how to read and how to read legal briefs, and began to fight for his freedom with the help of a chaplain who was there at the prison ministry. And eventually and ultimately, he began to get some help and support, notably from Maya Moore, who just got inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Shout out to her. And in the midst of this incredible basketball career, she gets introduced to Jonathan, by her uncle, who is the chaplain in the prison, and begins to correspond with him and begin to use her platform as an athlete, a very well-known athlete, a very, successful athlete, to shine light on this issue. Well, the combination of these two dynamic people result in, after 23 years of him being exonerated in 2020 and being freed. And then the plot twist happens. They get married. And so we ended up doing an interview with the both of them. And Jonathan asked me for some help to go back to the prison that he had been unjustly incarcerated in, because he still had a heart for the people he left behind, for the people that he could see their faces and correspond with them. He was like, I want them to know that there's hope. And I want them to also know what's out here to help them and to keep their head up. And he said, hey, can you help me come back? And we were like, yeah, let's do it. We brought our friend Lecrae and Tadashi with us. So two Grammy award-winning artists. And we do this concert at the Jefferson City Correctional Center and at Algoa Correctional Facility. And Jonathan speaks from his heart and gives them this message of hope. Maya speaks, and so we capture this story in this documentary called The Return, to see, because everybody kept saying, and here's the kind of the play on words, because recidivism is a huge issue, right? So we had this incredible opportunity to support Jonathan and his desire to go back to the prison and return, but not as a returnee incarcerated, not as an aspect of recidivism, but as a message and a vehicle of hope. And we wanted to accomplish several things. One, we wanted to give people a picture and a snapshot of life on the inside. A lot of these brothers, you know, are forgotten, stigmatized on the outside. And man, it just brightened their day to see and realize that not everybody's forgotten about them. And so we want to encourage people to even consider getting involved in prison ministry. And then beyond that, we also want people to consider, what does it look like to help change the system, right? Not just, again, give people a loaf of bread, but ask the question, why is there starvation in the first place? And so Jonathan and Maya partnered together to create a organization called Win with Justice that highlights the issue of prosecutorial reform and how we can be aware about how even our votes can shape who gets into these places, and having someone who is reform-minded and looking for opportunities to make rights or to make wrongs right versus those who are just trying to defend the status quo. And so all of that is in the documentary, and we're looking forward to sharing that. We have another podcast that's, we just did called Faith Under Construction, which we're really excited about as well, that highlights these issues. So yeah, that's what we got going on.
Y'all have a lot of work that you're doing at Our Daily Bread. Good work. Very good work. What is one justice-related issue that you would love to see addressed more by the church? I know there's a lot, but what's something that either we tapped into a little bit, maybe something we haven't really tapped into from your vantage point? What are your thoughts on that?
Whew. Boy, what a question in this day and time, because there's so much, right? There's so much. I think that I'll give a couple. I'll cheat a little bit.
With me.
Staying on the prison reform issue, because I've been thinking a lot about that, having interacted with Jonathan, and we actually have a director of prison ministry at Our Daily Bread Ministries. Shout out to Bo Cornelius. And I do think that there's something just so broken about our systems that having advocacy in those spaces are really important and helpful. I mean, even down to like families have to like supply inmates with like underwear and socks. Like, how are you supposed to be in a place and you don't even have the basics, right?
Right.
So I think that a ministry of presence is a really important and valuable place to start. But then also, again, while you're dealing with the triage to kind of use a medical, right, you need an emergency room.
Right.
But the hospital should not just have emergency rooms. There's also critical care. There's also preventative medicine that prevents people from needing to be in the emergency room in the first place, right? And so what we are looking at is what are the things that we can put in place to have that conversation. And we believe that, the church can make a difference. There was I'll give you an example. There was a church in Colorado who decided to highlight the issue of foster care, for example. And the fact that there were so many kids that went without being adopted. Do you know, like, there was a season in which there were no foster children needing homes in the entire state because the church got behind making sure that each of those kids had a family and a home to be in. Completely flipped the paradigm. And I think that, imagine just taking that same energy and looking at issues of what would happen if people knew that there were people behind saying, hey, this justice process is not being fairly executed, or these needs aren't being met. Why do you have to go 8 to 10 hours away, to go visit somebody versus them being close? So there are all of these different components of that are work. And of course, some of this also has to do with our civic engagement in the electoral process. And I know a lot of times we are undernourished in our understanding of the scriptural commitment to civic engagement, right? And so our lead pastor started in the wake of the George Floyd murder, an organization called Pray March Act. And Pray March Act is a organization in New York City that focuses on making the invisible justice of God visible in the city of New York. And so a key component of that is highlighting civic engagement issues. We have ceded for far too long the ground of allowing misinformation, disinformation, straight up lies to govern how people think about the political and electoral process and just the social implications of things. And so we try to educate people on those things and also show up to support, instances of justice and to push back on injustice, even, dare I say, anti-democratic, fascist, expressions of things. And so I think in an ideal world, and I know I love the work that Dr. Jamar Tisby is doing in this space of, really helping us understand the fact that part of what it means to show up as a fully embodied soul in our world is recognizing that what we do in the ballot box, what we do in our civic arena has consequences. Now, the beautiful part as believers is that we have incredible, again, going back to the meal illustration, you shouldn't make the political part your only thing, right? You shouldn't make, and even in the context of social change, there's so much. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a perfect example of someone who changed the world in the course of society without ever being an elected official. But he also was understanding and savvy of the processes and knowing how to put pressure when pressure was needed on those systems. And saw that as a calling.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to recapture the sense of a prophetic vision in our world in which many churches are being used in horrible ways to essentially replicate injustice as opposed to push back against that darkness with the light. And so I think either of those things are valuable expressions of what does it look like to have a holistic picture of all of the gospel affords us and challenges us to.
Yeah. Those are all very important moments for us to show up for and speak prophetically into. How do you continue to cultivate joy in the midst of all this work?
Yeah. How do we cultivate joy in the midst of it? Well, this is a great place to ask that question because I'm a still die-hard Eagles fan.
Hey, come on.
And we just won that chip. I got my Eagle green on. You know what I'm saying?
Green
there it
every
is.
day.
I had to come in with the green.
I'm here for it.
And I do think, sports provides a really healthy way as an outlet. And that's something I just grew up being a huge fan of. And so win or lose, you ride with your team. But let me tell you, like both times that the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I was took a train down, rode down with folks to come to the parade. I'm there in my gear.
Hear that.
You know what I mean? Rooting the team on. And so I think, whether it's football, basketball, whatever's going on, I'm a big sports fan and that's oftentimes a place that gives me joy. Sixers, not so much. That's a place that increases my long suffering in my prayer life.
I understand.
But nah, it's all good. And just so you have to have outlets where you're engaging in life. So that's one. Another one is taking care of myself, holistically in terms of, just the body and, so having, ample time to, like work out, eating good food, and community. I think those are all things that I enjoy and that, I think is important components. One last thing that I could think of that is valuable is stillness. And this is something I've been leaning into more and growing in.
Right.
Is I'm a naturally very busy person, activating kind of person. And so I've learned and benefited from the practice of, being still and knowing that He is God. And remembering that, because especially over the last few years, there have been moments where it can be easy to just have despair.
Yeah.
And to just be overwhelmed by the brokenness in the world. And that's where I'm not, I think you have to really monitor your social media consumption.
Agreed.
Because again, going back to this food analogy, if all I'm eating is candy, if all I'm eating is this, then it's actually shaping my body. It impacts everything. And so what I've learned to do is to put the phone down more, try to be present with people. But also, what does it look like to have regular rhythms of Sabbath? Going back to that Sabbath, that's a Jubilee. That is like still important for the soul, still important for the body. And so I take regular, I was a part of a spiritual kind of retreat, in community for 2 years. And since then I've been kind of still maintaining a practice of, once a quarter, just getting away and getting with God and working on writing and just kind of, all of that. So I think that those are all things that are important to be holistic in every aspect of your life, because if you're just doing the one thing, you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah. Though that was some really great advice and things that I think we all should be looking to practice, especially that stillness. What would you say, as we get ready to close, what would you say you'd want your legacy to be? What do you want your witness to be for generations to come?
There's a verse, I guess if it's a life verse, if there's such thing, it's for me, Ephesians 2:10. And I love it because I think as a hip hop fan, you like wordplay and everybody knows a lot, Ephesians 2:8-9, for it's by grace you've been saved through faith. It is not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, lest no man should boast, right? Yes. And especially because in the beginning, I was that boastful person that thought it was my works that made me right with God. That verse always, came alive to me. Yeah. Because the gift of God is grace, and it's like nobody can boast about it because Christ did all the work. Yeah. And so no one can boast because it can't be our work. And then in verse 10, it says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works that he made in advance for us to do. Yes. So you're not saved by your works, but you're saved for good works because you are his workmanship, bars, right? And it gets even better because that word workmanship in the Greek is the Greek word poema, which is where we get the word poem from. So God is saying we are his 16 bars, right? We are his workmanship. We are his craft. We're his best lines, created in advance to do good works that we should walk in them. And so my hope for my legacy is what I hope my legacy would be is just that I do that I walk in the good works that God has prepared beforehand. And leave a witness that it is that holding those two beautiful things together. It is not by our works that we're rescued. That is a false number. And I think a lot of people feel the weight and the burden of that, even like me, if you weren't necessarily grown up in church, but you still feel like this sense of responsibility to get it right, to be right, to do the right things. And I think being freed from that burden, to realize you can't do it on your own. You were never meant to lift that. That's too heavy for you.
Right.
It's an incredible grace that God has given us. But that's not all. But then he does save us for good works. Because now that I realize it's not me that's doing it, now I can operate freely in what he has called me to do.
That's right.
And over time grow. And then the last part of that is I don't know. That's a very broad category, okay, that he made for in advance for us to do. I don't know all the things he's made for me to do yet. I didn't know when I was doing campus ministry that I would be, making documentaries. I didn't know when I was, teaching, first graders, in Philly public schools that I'd be pastoring as well. And so the walking in them also suggests a journey that you would walk in them. You don't know which season, what that walking in looks like. But what I do know is I put one foot in front of the other and just try to trust God for the next season. And what can I do today to be as faithful as possible to what he's put in front of me? That's the next step in the path. And so that's what we're trying to do now. And I don't know where that's going to lead me, but, we keep walking. I may not know what the future holds.
Come on.
But I know who holds the future.
But that's some church up in here.
Hey, you know what I'm saying?
Rasool, you are such a gift to the body. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your friendship with us at The Witness.
Yes.
And we are excited to see how God continues to play out your story and however we can be a part of it. We're here.
Thank you so much. And I am so proud of you as well as you step into this, role of leadership and music and being a mogul of all the things. But no, I'm so grateful to have been able to partner with The Witness. And we all even got our own page on our website, experiencevoices.org/The Witness. So, it's always a blessing to be with you.
Same here, Rasool. Thank you all for listening. As you go about your week, we're praying for abundance of peace for each of you. Peace and love. And look out. Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, family. Thanks for spending time with us on Can I Get a Witness? It's always an honor to share stories that remind us of who we are and whose we are. Follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, at The Witness BCC, and visit thewitnessinc.com to join the movement and stay tuned. Until next time, keep shining, keep showing up, and keep bearing witness.